That moves us on to the championship with some moves being made. Graham, I'm going to come to you first on this one because it was something that we spoke about last week in terms of it's probably one of the more serious kind of stories in terms of Workington getting saved because obviously we don't want clubs to stop mid-season, especially for the reasons that Workington had been suspended for. But the suspension was lifted. They quickly had meetings rearranged, which was obviously excellent. And they put in a big performance and a big win against a good a good pool side. And it was a good way for them to come back. And it all sounds kind of positive in terms of the press releases and stuff and how they've got it back. And I think it's all about building a sustainable future for them. But in terms of on track, couldn't have went any better on the return.
Yeah, a fantastic result. Pool, obviously, kind of most people's favourites, I would say, or if you polled, 100 people, it would probably come out more people would say Pool than others as favourites to win the league, and they went there, and I thought, Workington's break, maybe some of the form Workington had been showing before that Pool might do the job there, but Workington hit them hard early, and then kept it going, and hopefully, from a club point of view, they can build on that momentum. I don't know. I've not kind of read or seen what the sort of crowd figures were as opposed to the prior to the break and the kind of 3 p.m. going to the 6 p.m. Um, but it all sounds positive. It's I saw a few clips. There was some great racing as there tends to be. One in particular, Tate diving through the middle. Was it Lawson and Thompson? A fantastic move and kind of long way that continue and yeah, we all spoke about it last week, didn't we? And it's very easy to echo it that we want as many strong teams in this division and across British Speedway as possible. And fingers crossed, it was a blip. It's dealt with. They've got the support they need now. I don't know the ins and outs of what's been given, but you can only say fair play to Allied and the Vicena family.
Yeah.
Again, putting their time and money where their mouth is to help another club. There's a lot of promoters that wouldn't do that or can't, maybe don't have the ability to do that. So yeah, fingers crossed that carries on.
Absolutely, because as I say, the last thing we want is for Workington, such a great track. You want the best riders as possible racing on there, but as I say, there's got to be a kind of sustainable future. But for Pool, probably, Greg, I would say maybe a bit of a surprising loss. You would expect most of their guys to kind of enjoy the wide open spaces of Workington, really. But was it down to maybe Pool having a bad day, or the Comet's been galvanised?
Oh, it's a bit. I think it could have been a bit of a mixture of both. Um, I think that the comments would certainly have been like, you know, different start time. There may have been, some fans that have been humming and hawing about going, don't know if we're going to go. We better go because this might not last if we don't. Um, Again, I don't know what the crowd figures were like, but it's good that they did go out and they did what they did. Um, Poole probably thought that they were going to go there and it was going to be one of the easier meetings, one of the easier away meetings. Just with performances that Workington had early on, not necessarily in the league, but with the BSN series, etc. And they maybe thought, oh, this isn't going to be too bad. But yeah, Antti Vilas and 𝗬𝗪𝗓𝗍, they've sort of stepped it up again. My pal 𝗘𝗶𝗴𝗵𝘁 seemed to have a nice meeting there as well, and also friend of us all, 𝗧𝗪𝗓𝗍 was trapping. He had the gate and gloves on, so all in all, a pretty decent meeting for them. And now, kind of, if they can do that in the first meeting back against Poole, it kind of shows the rest of the league, like, well, you've all got to come back here. This could be exciting for you all. So we'll see how that goes. And of course, there's going to be they're having a meeting on Saturday, which is just been announced. It's live on BSN on Saturday night. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty interesting one against Scunthorpe. So all eyes, I would imagine, will be on that fixture.
Absolutely. We'll get to our BSM meeting of the week just in a little bit as well, Greg. But Laura, when you look at there's been a lot of meetings this weekend, and there's been a wee bit of a shift and a shuffle in the league table, which I expect to keep on happening over the next few weeks. Because when I look at Workington, they've only raised two meetings, both at home. They've to visit everywhere. There's still sides that have only raised 5 matches and stuff. So and the league's so tight that there's probably only, when I look at between Plymouth at the bottom of the League 1-2, who we'll talk about in a second, and Oxford in fourth, there's only 5 points between them. So it's fair to say that the league is quite condensed. It's very competitive. But if I take it back to last Wednesday, I don't want to, but I'm going to.
I think we should.
I'm going to take it back to kind of last Wednesday. If we rewind back to last Tuesday when we recorded the podcast, Graham predicted it to be, I think it was 46-44 to Oxford. Very wrong. I think I was predicting it to be close. Very wrong. For Oxford, though, it was a great night. Big win over Berwick. Set their stall out early, 10-2 up after 2 heats, and the writing was on the wall. I was watching the Oxford TV coverage, and you interviewed Stuart Dixon. I think that was after heat three, mm-hmm. And he was talking about it. If things continued the way they were, things could get embarrassing pretty quickly. For me, listening to that, obviously I work with Stuart at Berwick. It's quite a hard listen when your team manager can kind of see how things are going. Maybe he's taking that, what I'm reading for that is he's taking that for people's body language, etc. as well within the pits. So that was quite worrying for a Berwick point of view. But from an Oxford point of view, Laura, it was an excellent evening, considering obviously they had a couple of home losses, but definitely a palate cleanser against the Bandits.
Mm-hmm. He said it was after heat 3, and he said the night's over. And in all honesty, I kind of didn't sit well that he said that with me. Like, I'm not wanting to like publicly criticize him, but if he's supposed to be leading the team and boosting the morale throughout the course of the meeting, and after heat 3 he's saying the night's over, then who is going to inject that positivity back into the camp? Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I was quite surprised by the result. I genuinely was saying, like, to people in the day, I thought Berwick could win.
Mm-hmm.
Like, seeing what PK had done round Oxford on the Monday, I said to him, I was like, please don't do that Wednesday. But I was really, really shocked by the result. Was it that Berwick had a poor night? Yes, they had a poor night, but also actually all of the Oxford team had a fantastic night, which I think maybe made it look a little bit worse than it was. You had like Luke popping out and overtaking and pulling moves, which is sometimes a little bit unusual for him. Sometimes he has to win from the gate. He'll probably kill me for saying that, but it's true. So I think just to rub a little bit of salt in the wound, the Cheetahs all also had a fantastic night, and they were pushing on to try and get a bigger win as they can, because Berwick's really hard to come to as an away team.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that you hear kind of most often with Berwick. But Greg, I said it before when we were recording last week in terms of that. Although Berwick's home form is strong, they've won 3 out of 3. The issue that they've got, and Graham and I were actually discussing this on Friday night as well at Edinburgh, is that this. I nearly said we there, Graham. I pulled myself back. That was nearly a mistake. The problem for Berwick is that they're getting up in meetings at home, quite significant gaps, but then that leads dwindling. But for here on in, it's so important, isn't it, to get to ensure obviously the home form is strong, because as Laura just said there, other teams look at it as Edinburgh are very strong at home. But the home form does need to get a wee bit better in terms of racking up scores. It's okay winning every meeting, but in terms of competing for bonus points, need to be racking up scores a wee bit.
Yeah, they really do. They've got, this weekend they've got a big challenge against them. When they go up against Plymouth, the sort of new look Plymouth, that's going to be a really tough ask for them. It's tricky. It's tricky at the minute. Laura was saying about Stuart not just knowing that the meeting was over, sort of thing. That's tough for the guys, because he's not in a way, I can see it like he's not treating them like kids. He's kind of just went, this is an absolute waste of time. Shouldn't even bother coming here. Blah blah blah. You know, they're not pulling their weight. And I mean, you do look across the board. RR scored 1 point. You know, the Sam Hagan only scored 3 points, and that was a win from, you know, he had the rest were last. And I think, you know, I might be wrong. I'll actually check it right now. Yeah, reserve only scored 1 point throughout the whole, you know, that's both reserves scoring 1 point. That's not good enough. And then again, at home, yeah, I mean, they're getting the hang of the track at home. You kind of just have to think to yourself, what are Berwick going to do? You know, Dale Wood, although he's similar ages to myself, he's not been involved in Speedway that long, so he is kind of a newcomer to the sport, especially at the championship level. It's a newcomer to it. But when you see, you know, Sam Hagan, he's just won the British Under-21 title not that long ago. You'd expect him to score well around Oxford. You know, that didn't happen at all. And then Jack Smith, who has got, you know, he's a young lad as well, but he has got plenty years experience. He shouldn't be, you know, going there and getting 0 points. So there's probably a bit of head scratching going on. Not just the management, but the riders as well. They'll be kicking themselves. And yeah, but you know, you look at the way that the Cheetahs went on last Wednesday. They had an absolute stormer of a night, and they'll be delighted with that. I know there's been rumours going around about what's going to happen with the shift of the team, because I think everybody thought Nichols is coming back to Oxford. Now that's not happening. Is there someone else in the pipeline? Have they got someone else picked up? It's everybody's sort of like that rumours kind of just went and disappeared. Are we going to see someone?
It's funny that, because Graham was kind of informing me how this works in terms of if you're over or under the points limit. So I'm going to yield the floor to Graham here to tell you how this actually works.
Yeah, so it was always going to be a challenge, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. But it was always going to be a challenge to get Scott in, because Oxford are above the points limit now. So you can't accumulate riders' points and use the points you have and replace that. So say you replace, if you're above the points limit and you replace 2 6-pointers, you don't have 12 points to spend. You can't bring in a 9 and a 3. It would need to be 2 guys under the guys you're replacing, or the total team needs to be assessed is the wrong word, declared, that's the word I'm looking for, under the points limit. So I think when I looked last week, we're Oxford not like 42 or something. So to fit Scott in, you actually would have had to get rid of 12 points, maybe even 14. I guess what Scott's on close to a 9. So say 13 points if you're going for Scott and 2 2-pointers. You know, there's 13 points there, plus the 2 you need to get below. So you've kind of got to shed 15 points to bring in 13. And you know, we know the shortage of riders, we know the amount of juniors that are out there and stuff that maybe aren't ready or don't want championship rides quite yet. I just always felt it was going to be a challenge, because they didn't have that 7.5, 8-point rider behind Sam, and you're never replacing Sam. Let's be honest, he's the best rider in the league.
Yeah.
So I always just kind of felt that, you would have fought Oxford because he's been there the last few years, and there'll be people on this pod know a lot more about it than I do what goes on there. But mathematically, it seemed a challenge.
Absolutely. And we'll get to the Scott Nichols news just shortly. Just want to get through the kind of meetings that took place. Because Scunthorpe then beat Plymouth live on BSN. That got them the 2 points plus the bonus point, because they had won down at Plymouth. But Graham, you and I were at Edinburgh on Friday evening, and you said last week the words were ringing around my ears as I was watching the meeting on Friday evening, in terms of if you'd offer Gavin Parr an 8-point defeat down the road with a bonus point, he would have been buzzing. And effectively, that's the way that can kind of worked out. Because if I was a Redcar fan and I was watching that meeting, it was about as comfortable a meeting for Edinburgh as what you'll ever see. They were never in any danger. They were never in any danger of losing the meeting. At one point, it looked as, especially mid-meeting, probably the middle kind of batch of races, it looked as if Edinburgh would maybe kick on slightly. Difficult when you've got guys like Charles Wright and Danny King. And big shout out to 𝗘𝗶𝗴𝗵𝘁, because maybe eyebrows were raised when he was selected as the guest, not the strongest rider around Edinburgh, but he was absolutely fantastic on Friday when he was out in front. It looked as if he really had the place dialed in. But when I looked at the middle back to the meeting, when Edinburgh got points up, I thought they were going to be safe for the bonus point. I really did. But Becker just kept chipping away. And as I say, Danny was sensational, as he always is, really. Followed up with, I think he scored a maximum on Thursday evening, followed it up. I think the only race he kind of lost, really, Graham, effectively was trying to protect. He was riding a line he really didn't want to be on because he knew where Paco was coming from.
Ace Piper in front of him, didn't he? And he was
kind of
protecting the 3-all.
Yeah, he was kind of protecting Ace slightly as well. So, but like from the Edinburgh point of view, you actually sensed the disappointment around the stadium. Although they had won the meeting, you would have thought they had lost. And again, what I took for that, again, because the league's so tight, I think the fans sense how important the bonus points are. So it was so strange that they got over the line and they won, and actually most fans were actually disappointed with the fact that they never got over the line with a bonus point. It was as if they lost. It was so surreal. But again, fair play to Redcar, and a definitely an important point for them.
Yeah, I think so, and I think Gavin Parr kind of said that actually, didn't he? Got interviewed before Heat 15, and he says, yeah, the bonus point was kind of the aim. I didn't realise, or we probably didn't realise when we were talking, I don't know if it happened after or before, but Charles Wright was kind of riding through a bit of an injury, like some kind of pulled muscle or something, Gavin was saying, so that kind of subdued him. And then beyond that, it was a strange one. It used the exact words I described it to you in the bar after, didn't I? Said it's the most comfortable 4-point victory I think you'd ever see by a team, because there were 6 up early, 12 up by the end of Heat 12. And there's, from a Monarchs point of view, it's probably an ongoing frustration that I think I'm right in saying outside of the home KO Cup match against Workington, they've only taken one heat advantage between heats 13 and 15. The rest of the way, and I think that was at home to Berwick back in the BSN series. Maybe somebody I might be getting the stats a wee bit wrong. Somebody posted it in one of the Monarchs groups, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it or trying to remember it. And your concern is, even from a Monarchs point of view, if you're a Monarchs fan, was maybe just how easy Heat 13 and 15 was. Heat 13, the Monarchs kind of get 2 goes at it. Michael Pamtoff came down. Victor Palovaga gated ahead of Charles Wright. But you were never worried that Charles Wright wasn't going to pass him if you're a Redcar fan. He was charging harder. He was on the inside line. He went through, and in Heat 15, you had an unbeaten Justin Sedgman. So you're thinking, okay, you're unbeaten. He scored 13. It's a great night's work for Justin. You're thinking, right, go and put a race on. And the 2 Redcar boys were back in the pits by the time the Monarchs were getting at the start, it felt like. It was they were gone and away. And that's maybe been the story of the season. 2-point defeat at Berwick, 2-point defeat at Plymouth when they were 8 up. And you're saying when every point is going to be crucial, you can't give these points away. From a Redcar point of view, it just keeps ticking over. You're right that they've probably got a few things they need to sort there with the injuries to Eric Riss or what's happening there, and they'll be hoping to get kind of Jake Mulford back. He took a knock over the weekend, didn't he? Missed the Bellevue meeting last night. They'll be hoping to get him back. Jason Edwards riding himself back to fitness after his broken shoulder. So Redcar will be fine. But I think, going into it, if you'd offered both teams what they got, they might have taken it. But I think Edinburgh were maybe the more disappointed by the way it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, just in terms of what Graham's kind of talking about there, and we spoke about it there with Berwick in terms of teams getting up. I mean, Berwick, again, I'm using Berwick because the example that comes to my head, because I've got the facts in my head in terms of being 10 points or more up on teams at a certain point in the meeting, probably about exactly what Graham's saying in terms of the Edinburgh meeting on Friday by maybe Heat 10 or 11, and then kind of teams chipping away at that lead. Is that more, are we looking more towards how teams are then built, and actually that kind of last batch of heats is always going to favour the teams that have kind of built to a stronger top end?
I think so. I think for sure that will have a massive effect on it. And also, if teams are slightly stronger in the reserve like the lower end of the team in the reserve berth, they've always got that option of throwing them in if they're having a good night to chip away at the deficit. But I genuinely also think, and it is no disrespect to anyone, I do think having the right driving force in the pits behind them in terms of team management and people around them, I think that is absolutely crucial. And I think if the atmosphere, I know there wasn't a full back of house team there at Oxford when Berwick were there, but if that is something to go by, I think it's definitely something that needs looking at in order to keep that morale and keep that effort going into the later part of the meeting.
Absolutely. Ironically, now that we've kind of spoke about the kind of fixtures for last week, if I look down the table, there was only one team that didn't race, and they seem to have been the big winners. I'm going to come to you in a minute, Greg, just in terms I want to get your reaction to kind of Scott Nicholls and the changes at Plymouth. But I'll get into this with Graham first. When you actually look at the bun fight that happened over the past week, Glasgow not racing, still in second place, Poole losing, but Scunthorpe gaining slightly. They're the team that seem to have won out this. It just appears that standing still doing nothing has benefited them really, and it's that they're still in that second place. The Poole are no further ahead of them, and they've raced a meeting more now than what they did. It kind of look as if they're kind of consolidating in that second place, really.
Yeah, I think so, and I think even before last week, we probably would have said that Poole and Glasgow were clear. They'll both be going for that kind of top spot before the playoffs. So, we spoke about it a little bit earlier, didn't we? I think most Glasgow fans were probably in the same opinion that Poole would have maybe taken something at Workington. So anytime they do drop points, that is a boost for them. So yeah, I think they've been watching other results happen kind of up and down the country. They won't have been too upset, but knowing Glasgow, they'll still just be focused on their own business. And I mean, again, I don't have the fixtures fully in front of me, but they must be due a run of fixtures soon. They're another one that maybe like Berwick had that run, over the last couple of months. It kind of feels like you look down a fixture list for the week, and for 2 or 3 weeks in the trot, you don't see the Tigers' name. So, they've got their full team now. We've been reliably informed that it's Jimmy Nail that's at number 2. Greg was quick to correct us after the podcast last week. We both murdered the pronunciation. So that was 2 things we got wrong between the Berwick Oxford predictions and the Glasgow's new signing.
Listen,
Apart from that, we did really well.
But everybody that thinks they're listening to this because we're going to give them some sort of inside information is sorely mistaken. That is not what we're here for. We're here to pass remarks.
What's the old line, thank you? 60% of the time we're right every time, or something. Exactly. I have to paraphrase it.
If you can come back to me with the name of that aftershave for there, I'll be well impressed.
Sex Panther.
1, 2, 3, wang. Both these. There you go. I knew you were movie buffs, but you completely caught me off guard.
Sex Panther works 60% of the time, every time.
Honestly, I never thought that there would be 2 words that would get mentioned in the pod tonight, but there you go. There you go.